Well, the school performance plan really is our vision of what or how the school wants to look. I think administrators and leadership teams will get together and they'll figure out what pathway they want to go. And I think the SPP, or the school performance plan itself, is that lens they look through. And then when they look in that lens, we generally ask them to go, let's figure out a couple goals that they want throughout the year. And then when they look at those goals, what kind of measurable objectives can we look at and monitor throughout the year? And then within there, we start to create action steps and plans that we're going to try to obtain those goals and how we're going to measure. We look in the areas of professional development, we look in the areas of family engagement, and we look in the areas of curriculum instruction. And I think it's one of those where we, as school improvement coordinators, we really encourage, it's not something we build and then put on the shelf, it's something that's a living document. It's continually working, and we have to check our progress. We have to figure out our barriers, and we have to figure out our next steps. And it's something that we encourage to look at on a regular basis to figure out, okay, well, here's our vision, here's our pathway, how we are going to know if we're getting there, what are our check marks, or what are some of the roadblocks that we're seeing. So I think it's really the document that guides the entire school year, and ultimately the document is for student achievement. It's to try to close the achievement gaps. It's to try to create more proficiency within ELA or within math, or whatever the goals they decide that they're going to choose. So it's really an important document that guides everything they do the entire year.
Needs assessment primarily is, as Nick said, with the blueprint of that school performance plan. The CNA is really a comprehensive look at the entire school, what the school, its story, it talks about successes, but it also talks about areas that maybe it's not meeting some of the goals that it wants to meet, or maybe not meeting student outcomes or achievements. The CNA is primarily the piece that you're going to tell the story of your school. Everything that's going on that's going well, everything that's not going on. The needs assessment ultimately is going to drive your school performance plan, that change. What are we going to do to drive more student outcomes, to better achievement and higher achievement for our kids? Ideally, it identifies that need. What is that need for improvement? Where are we not reaching either all of our kids or a specific group of kids? But ultimately, the CNA is that assessment that says, this is what we've been doing, this is what we need to get to, and this is, in many cases, where the data shows that we're not quite reaching those goals. At the same time, it also shows things that we are doing well. And that's one of the things that we try to encourage all of our principals and leadership teams that we work with is, you also want to talk about the things you are doing well. And that's part of what the SPP itself does, is that living document piece allows it to continue to be molded and crafted as you go on. It's not, as Nick said earlier, we're going to do this because we have to do it. We're going to put a check in the box, put it on a shelf, and go, okay, we'll come back to this next year. That needs assessment talks about, these are the things we did last year. These things worked. These things didn't work the way we thought they would. What modifications can we make? And what can we use as evidence as far as that data goes that drives that decision making, rather than trying to craft a brand new plan every year. And that's why the needs assessment is so important. And it kind of becomes a running narrative for schools. If you look at that 3 to 5 year plan, you can keep addressing that CNA over and over again and pulling things out of it that you did well. You can look at the plan that you had, and going forward you can look at what you've been doing and what has been working, what hasn't been working. But ultimately, it's the piece that drives the entire document. It's one of the areas that we've seen a much greater change, especially from the state, that they want to see more focus in that area, but also they want to see data-driven decision making out of that CNA. But ultimately, it's the piece that drives the entire document. And without a strong, thorough CNA, you really can't do anything else in the document. And then one of the things that we crafted, we'll get you, is the SPP triangle that talks about that CNA. But ultimately, it's the piece. If it doesn't appear in that comprehensive needs assessment, what the state is basically says, it should not appear anywhere else in that document because it wasn't important enough to talk about early. It shouldn't be anywhere else in that document.
Yeah. In the past, I think we've seen a lot of schools really talk about the quantitative data, and now there's a big push, and it's great to see that qualitative data. And then Ron referred to it about that narrative portion. And it really just tells the story of your school of why we're doing what we're doing. And so it's been an important piece, and I think with administrators and leadership teams, they've fully jumped on board trying to explain we're unique, and this is our story, and this is what we're doing, and this is why. So it's been helpful.
Well, and it's also going to talk about those root causes, which is another piece of the document, but you're going to talk about your root causes in there, why maybe you're not succeeding, things that maybe need to change at your site. And I think the idea behind the CNA more than anything is to get out of a pattern of trying to reinvent the wheel every year. Every year we want to try and do something completely different. The CNA helps guide the process where you can actually look at what you have been doing and then make the modifications rather than scrapping the plan every year, doing it, and again, kind of getting in that check in a box, put it on the shelf model. You're going to basically continue to tell your story and story of your achievements as well. And that's one of the things we really push is we want to talk about the story of what you're doing well at your site. What are areas that need to improve, but also what have we been doing that's working? Might it work in other areas at our site? Might it work, for other schools? And those are shared on our website, and people can look at any school and get ideas. And we often share CNAs out with other leadership teams and say, this is what a really well written, or this is a school that's similar to what you've got going on. Maybe something there can help you guys out.